Dean Halbrook had survived raising a daughter alone, rebuilding a failing workshop, and working 3 years beneath a boss who could silence a room with one look. But one careless word in a grocery aisle nearly undid him. Without looking up, Dean called the woman beside him sweetheart, certain he was speaking to his 8-year-old daughter. When he turned, he found Cora Bellamy, the polished chief executive who signed his paychecks, standing inches away with color rising across her face. What she admitted next was not playful, and it was not harmless. It exposed a feeling she had hidden for years, just as Dean's entire department was being considered for closure. By Monday morning, one tender mistake had become a test of reputation, power, and whether two lonely people could tell the truth without letting desire decide someone else's future. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Dean Halbrook measured most Saturdays in errands. Laundry before 9. Soccer practice at 10. Groceries before the lunch crowd. At 35, he had learned that single fatherhood was less about heroic sacrifice than remembering 20 small things before breakfast. His 8-year-old daughter, Olive, walked beside the cart, reading their grocery list through pink plastic glasses. Strawberry blonde braids rested over her lavender puffer vest, and freckles crossed her nose like spilled cinnamon. She insisted shell-shaped macaroni was engineering because it caught more cheese. Dean was the lead carpenter at Bellamy House, an upscale home and kitchen company. He supervised the small fixture workshop behind its oldest flagship and could spot a loose hinge from 10 feet away. A brass hinge clipped to his keyring had belonged to Olive's mother, Mara. She had placed a gold star sticker on it before her death 5 years earlier, and Olive replaced the star every New Year's Day. He was reaching for cereal when Olive announced that the free sample counter had cinnamon cookies and asked permission to go 15 feet away. Dean nodded, watched her reach the attendant, then bent over the grocery list again. "Sweetheart, could you grab the cinnamon?" he asked the woman who stopped beside the cart. The aisle went quiet in the strange way ordinary places do when embarrassment is about to arrive. The hand reaching toward the spice shelf froze. Dean looked up. Cora Bellamy stood beside him. She was 33, the chief executive of Bellamy House and granddaughter of its founder. Dean usually saw her in glass conference rooms, making weak proposals collapse with one look. Here, honey blonde waves fell over a camel coat, ivory knit top, and dark jeans. Her amber eyes were wide. A deep blush moved from her cheeks toward her ears. Dean's hand tightened around the cart. "Ms. Bellamy." "I thought you were Olive. I gathered that. I'm sorry." Cora took the cinnamon from the shelf and placed it in his cart. Her fingers trembled once before she tucked them into her coat pocket. "You have no idea how long I've wanted you to call me that," she said. Dean forgot the grocery list. He forgot the sample counter. For one stunned second, all he could see was the woman who had approved his apprenticeship program, defended his workshop after a costly fire code renovation, and always seemed to know when he entered a room. Then Olive returned, with half a cookie and enough instinct to recognize trouble. "Dad?" Cora stepped back immediately. The blush remained, but the softness in her face gave way to alarm at what she had revealed. "Olive, this is Miss Bellamy. She's my boss." Olive looked from Dean to Cora, then down at the cinnamon in the cart. "Did Dad forget someone's name again?" "Something like that," Cora said. She crouched so she was not towering over the child. She did not touch Olive or force cheer into her voice. "Your father makes beautiful things for our stores. He makes them strong," Olive corrected. "Beautiful breaks too." Cora's smile was small and genuine. "That's a better standard." Dean noticed a folder tucked beneath her arm. A page had shifted enough for him to recognize the workshop budget code. Above it was a red review stamp. Cora saw him notice and closed the folder against her coat. "This isn't the place," she said. "For which conversation?" The question was quiet, but it made the space between them honest. Cora looked toward Olive, then back at him. Either of them. She wished Olive a good weekend and left the aisle without buying anything. On the drive home, Olive declared that people turned pink when their faces told the truth first. Dean explained that Cora was his boss, so fairness had to come before feelings. Can fairness still like somebody? Olive asked. Yes, it just has to behave properly. That evening, Dean opened his laptop after Olive went to bed. The workshop's quarterly numbers were worse than he had expected. Online sales were growing. New stores used standardized imported fixtures, and the old flagship workshop occupied valuable city property. 12 craftspeople depended on it, including 3 apprentices Dean had trained himself. On his desk sat a 6-month-old proposal to convert part of the workshop into a community repair studio. Apprentices would learn on customers' damaged furniture, reducing returns and creating store traffic. Dean had delayed submitting it after Finance Chief Russell Cade warned him not to confuse sentiment with strategy. Now Dean understood the folder beneath Cora's arm. He also understood that submitting his idea after her confession could make a sound proposal look like a private bargain. At 9:12, an email arrived from Cora. It contained 4 lines. She apologized for crossing a professional boundary. She said Monday's workshop review would proceed through an independent committee. She would not participate in Dean's evaluation, and his reporting line would temporarily move to the Chief People Officer. The last line was personal. What I said was true. That is why I will be careful with it. Dean read the sentence twice, then closed the message without replying. He took the brass hinge from his keyring. The tiny gold star caught the desk lamp as he opened and closed it between his fingers. Useful things could survive pressure, but only if the joint between them was sound. On Sunday morning, he submitted the repair studio proposal through the company's formal portal. Monday brought snow, traffic, and the kind of office silence that meant rumors had arrived before facts. Dean entered the workshop at 6:30 in a burgundy waffle-knit Henley, olive chore jacket, dark jeans, and worn brown boots. The room smelled of maple dust and machine oil. Sunlight reached through high windows and settled over benches, scarred by 40 years of work. His team knew about the closure review. They did not know about the grocery aisle, and Dean intended to keep it that way. Margot Sayer, the Chief People Officer, arrived at 8 with an independent retail consultant and a labor representative. She was direct without being cold. Cora had formally recused herself from all decisions involving Dean, the workshop, and his proposal. Margot would supervise the process, and written scoring criteria would be shared with everyone. No private recommendations from the executive office, Margot said. No invisible vetoes from finance. Russell Cade folded his arms. The numbers are still the numbers. Then they should survive being seen, Dean replied. The committee gave him 10 days to test the repair concept using an unused service bay. Dean called former customers, neighborhood groups, and the trade school that supplied his apprentices. Within 48 hours, every trial appointment was taken. The first customer was Mr. Alvarez, an elderly man carrying a kitchen drawer wrapped in a bath towel. His late wife had painted blue flowers across its front. A plastic replacement cost less, but that was not why he came. Dean assigned the work to Nia, a 19-year-old apprentice with steady hands and very little confidence. He showed her how to remove the split dovetail without damaging the painted face. When the drawer slid smoothly again, Mr. Alvarez ran his thumb over one blue flower and went silent. No one applauded. Nia simply handed him the drawer, and he thanked her as if she had returned something larger. The studio filled with loose restaurant chairs, a family crib, and a cabinet door a worried mother wanted repaired before her son came home. The work generated modest fees. More importantly, customers stayed in the store while they waited. They bought hardware, paint, cookware, and replacement parts. Returns fell because technicians taught people how to maintain what they already owned. Cora never entered the service bay during the trial. Dean saw her only in scheduled meetings with Margot present. Cora asked the same questions of every department and never let her eyes linger. Her discipline did not make things easier. One evening, Olive's after-school program closed early because of the snow. Dean brought her to the workshop with Margot's permission. Olive sat at a safe bench wearing child-sized goggles, sorting wooden dowels by diameter. She found a broken dollhouse door in the scrap bin and decided it required immediate intervention. Dean gave her sandpaper, a tiny clamp, and strict instructions not to touch the glue gun. Cora arrived at the workshop entrance while Dean was helping Nia finish the painted drawer. She stopped when she saw Olive. "Am I allowed in?" Cora asked Margot, who stood nearby. "For the scheduled safety inspection, yes." Olive lifted her goggles. "Fairness is here." Dean nearly dropped the clamp. Cora pressed her lips together, fighting a smile. "I hope it is." During the inspection, Cora questioned every employee, checked safety records, and listened when they explained what needed replacing. She examined Olive's dollhouse door with the seriousness of a board proposal. "Strong or beautiful?" she asked. "Both," Olive said, "but strong first." Before leaving, Cora noticed the brass hinge on Dean's keyring. The new gold star flashed beneath the work light. "Olive replaces the sticker every year," Dean explained. Cora's expression changed. She knew Mara had died, but not about the hinge. "Some things deserve repair," she said. "Some things deserve to change shape," Dean replied. They were speaking about more than brass, and both knew it. Margot's presence kept the moment where it belonged. Honest, brief, and witnessed. The trial succeeded too well for Russell to dismiss, so he challenged its liability, staffing, and 3-year forecast. Dean worked after Olive slept, removing every number he could not defend. Cora could have helped. She understood investor language better than anyone. She did not call him. Instead, Margot sent the same financial guidance the company provided to all internal bidders. Cora's restraint became its own kind of answer. On the final presentation day, Dean stood before the committee beside a repaired maple cabinet. He wore a dark navy blazer over his burgundy Henley. His hands still carried a pale line of sawdust beneath one nail. "This is not charity," he said. "It is a service business, built around the reason this company existed in the first place. We help people live with things worth keeping." Russell asked whether emotion could scale. Dean opened the cabinet door. The small brass hinge on his keyring clicked softly against the handle. "Trust scales," he said. "Skill scales. Teaching people not to throw away what can be repaired scales. If we only sell the next object, someone cheaper will always beat us. If we help people care for a home, they remember who stood beside them." Cora sat at the far end of the table as an observer. Her cheeks did not color. Her expression did not soften. But Dean saw pride in the way she held still. The committee approved a 6-month pilot. The workshop would remain open while the results were measured. That should have been the ending. Instead, Russell asked Dean to stay behind. He placed a printed complaint on the table. An anonymous employee claimed Dean had used a personal relationship with Cora to protect his department. The grocery aisle had not remained private. Dean felt anger first, then fear. Not fear for himself. He could find carpentry work. He feared 12 people losing their jobs because someone had turned an awkward human moment into evidence of corruption. Margot opened a formal review. Dean and Cora surrendered their messages, calendars, and proposal records. Store footage confirmed the meeting was accidental, and drafts proved Dean's plan predated the confession. The review took 3 weeks. During that time, Dean and Cora did not speak alone. The distance was painful, but neither tried to shorten it. Olive asked why Ms. Bellamy had stopped visiting the workshop. "Because doing the right thing sometimes looks unfriendly from far away," Dean told her. The review cleared them of favoritism. It also found something more important. Cora's authority was too concentrated for any personal relationship with an employee to feel fully free, even with recusal. The company needed a structural answer, not a promise that 2 people would behave perfectly. Cora proposed one. Bellamy House would offer the workshop's tools, contracts, and lease rights to an employee-owned cooperative at an independently assessed price. Cora would not invest. The company could become its first client through an auditable contract. After 2 external valuations, the board approved the offer. Dean did not accept immediately. He gathered the 12 employees around the scarred central bench to review debt, ownership, insurance, and failure. When Nia asked whether apprentices could earn equity, Dean changed the plan so they could. They named the cooperative Open Joint Works, after the connection in furniture that reveals how pieces meet instead of hiding it. 6 months after the grocery aisle, Dean signed the final transfer papers. He was no longer Cora's employee. Bellamy House was a client, governed by a contract Margot's team could audit. That afternoon, Cora visited the workshop without an escort for the first time. Dean was sanding the edge of Mr. Alvarez's matching cabinet door. He wore his burgundy Henley, with the sleeves pushed to his forearms. Cora wore a fitted ivory knit dress beneath her camel coat, polished but less armored than before. They stood several feet apart. "Congratulations," she said. "Thank you for building a fair exit. You built the reason it was possible." The machines were quiet. Late sunlight warmed the sawdust in the air. Cora's cheeks began to color, and this time she did not hide it. "What I said in the store is still true," she said. "But I don't want gratitude. I don't want secrecy. And I don't want the answer you think a client deserves." Dean took the brass hinge from his pocket and turned it once between his fingers. "Then ask me when neither of us is in this room." They met that evening at a neighborhood diner halfway between their homes. No company car, no private dining room, no speeches about destiny. Cora arrived first and chose a booth near the window. Dean ordered coffee. She ordered pie before dinner and admitted she had wanted to do that since she was 12. Their first date lasted 2 hours. Cora admitted noticing him 3 years earlier when he showed executives a failed drawer instead of a polished sample. Dean confessed he had mistaken her self-control for dislike. Attraction did not erase caution, but honesty made caution easier to carry. Nothing happened quickly after that. Cora met Olive in public places and never tried to replace Mara. The first time she came to their apartment for dinner, she brought a loose drawer from her own kitchen and asked Olive whether it was worth saving. Olive inspected it with a flashlight. "Strong first," she declared. Dean repaired it while Cora chopped vegetables badly. Olive corrected both of them. Open Joint Works survived its first winter, trained 4 apprentices, and offered mobile repair days for older residents. Nia became its youngest voting member. Bellamy House gained loyal customers, and even Russell admitted the contract cost less than the returns it prevented. A year after the mistake, Dean and Olive returned to the same grocery store. Olive had grown an inch and abandoned pink glasses for green ones. She carried the list and placed cinnamon near the top with deliberate mischief. Cora joined them in the aisle after a long board meeting. Her honey-blonde hair was tied in a loose, low ponytail. She wore dark jeans, an ivory top, camel coat, and the comfortable brown boots Olive had convinced her to buy. Dean pretended to study 2 jars of cinnamon. "Sweetheart, could you grab the good one?" he asked. Cora reached for the shelf, then stopped. Color rose across her cheeks exactly as it had the first time. "Which sweetheart?" Olive asked. Dean looked at his daughter, then at the woman beside him. "Both of you, but only one of you knows how to choose cinnamon," Olive groaned. Cora laughed and placed the jar in the cart. At the checkout, Dean's keys slipped from his hand. Cora picked them up and noticed the tiny gold star on the brass hinge had begun to peel. Olive removed a fresh sticker from her pocket. For years, replacing the star had belonged only to her and Dean. She pressed it into Cora's palm. "You can do it this year," Olive said. Cora looked at Dean before touching the hinge. He nodded. She smoothed the new star onto the old brass with one careful thumb. The hinge opened. The hinge closed. Nothing about it was hidden, and nothing about it was trapped in the shape it had once held. Dean took Cora's hand as they walked toward the parking lot. Olive pushed the cart ahead of them, steering badly on purpose. The single careless word that might have cost them everything had not become permission to ignore the truth. It had forced them to build around it carefully, until affection no longer needed secrecy, power no longer distorted choice, and 3 people could carry the same small piece of memory toward a life that was finally their own.